All right, hurry, hurry, hurry. Preferably at a different table. If we forgot, we will remind you. And Larry, I don't know if this is you, but if this is you, don't lose it. Whose is this? Oh, okay. Whose is it? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Just make sure. Okay. Thank you, Larry. Okay. More stories, and then we'll contextualize them. Okay, come on. Shut the door, please. Okay. I want to talk about how to educate people to appreciate value. And by the way, you read that segment on value last night. I haven't read it. Did it make sense? One of the biggest fascinations that I have with business owners is we have a tendency to want to impose our definitions and our belief systems and our senses of value on our marketplace without first affirming that they agree. And what we think sometimes is great value, they don't even perceive as having any value. And certain things that we don't even think are relevant, like having the bathroom clean in a Chinese restaurant, or or having somebody have a good message on their phone system if they're on the phone, it can be extraordinary to somebody. Anyhow, we'll talk about some educational experiences. So, first thing, which is an interesting story, I had an amazing experience when I was in the seminar business. Almost like this, every time I do a seminar, I think, oh, what do I need to add? Because I was talking to Joe, who's come to a lot of our programs, and I said, I'm not really doing the tactical stuff anymore, but I want to make sure I add them. But I did the first program at 15,000, and I was trying to make it extraordinarily comprehensive. And this is an era when VHS was the vehicle of the moment, and it was very expensive to do it. And I had literally 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, committed to speakers and me and content and exercises. I had no more time for anything. And I had two very quality people to speak on the concept of direct response advertising. And I was happy. But in the middle of the night, I awoken and I thought, damn it, I need one more guy who had a piece of the puzzle that these two didn't, and it wasn't what I wanted to talk about. And I called him and he wasn't available. But I had already had him in another program and we had videotaped him. So I had a real problem because I had 300 people in a room who paid 15 grand, and we were spending a fortune. We were in our indulgent era. I had a colleague who made custom chocolate chip cookies that were costing us $2 a piece, and we were going through about 1,000 of them a day. People were eating, but we were in the halcyon days because we were having 300-400 people at a $15,000-$20,000 program. It was great. So I thought, okay, I really want them to have this piece of the puzzle. He can't come. I have it on video. What can I do? What I ended up doing was the only time I could possibly make available was a lunch, and we weren't buying lunches for anyone. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take the video. I'm going to rent video machines and big screens for it, which back then were very expensive, and I'm going to have to buy everybody lunch, which were very expensive at a hotel, even if you don't get a great lunch. Then the next one, I woke up and thought, damn it, it's so important, because I thought about what the guy did. I thought, I'm going to make everybody a damn copy of the VHS. And back then, you couldn't make a copy for it was like $30 a piece. Make a long story short, my little impetuous decision cost me about $50,000. Now, we were making a lot of money, but 50 grand. So, but I'm pretty proud. Adding more value, pretty good deal. So I'm off stage, and they're having lunch, and they're watching this video. And in the live presentation, the presenter had brought a book that he gave everybody. I didn't even remember it. And on the video he's saying, and I'll give you my book at the end. And everyone gets mad at me when I come back because they didn't get the book. And instead of me saying, you unappreciative marketing twerps, I said, you know, that's a good point of view, but let me give you a different reference. And I took the time, like the Panama Canal, to educate them on the fact that this wasn't on the schedule. I didn't have to do it. I had to do this. I did that, did this, did this. And by the time I was done educating them, they were enormously grateful. But most people can't appreciate what goes into something if you don't help them. And it isn't really their fault. If people don't appreciate you, if they don't respect you, if they don't purchase from you, if they don't value you, whose fault do you think that really is? Think about it. It's ours, because we haven't not demanded, we haven't earned it. We haven't created enough value, enough unique differentiation, enough contribution. So that's one story. The next story is one of my clients. I'm in lots of businesses. We were in the investment gem business for a while. It was very, very, very hot when hard assets were really in vogue. And my client sold like $100 million of investment-grade rubies, sapphires, emeralds in all of about a year, and then the market died. And we were stuck with about $20 million at cost of magnificent gems. In fact, all the times my clients would get stuck with that, they would pay me. And like my ex-wife had 9-carat sapphires and 8-carat emeralds, because that's how I got paid by that client. But make a long story short, they had $25 million in real costs sitting in inventory that just died. And that was a lot, because we weren't that big, because we were working on smaller margins. And I had a continuous argument with the owner of the business, but just an ideological one. He would always go right to the end, and I always advocate you've got to educate people to appreciate what the hell the proposition is, the value, and the action. And he would never do it. He would just say, we got all these gems, we're going to offer them to you at a special price, and nobody bought anything. And they didn't want me involved, because when I got involved, I got a piece of the sale. But after they couldn't sell anything, they brought me in, and I sat down and wrote a letter that we sent out to our buyer base. And honest to God, we sold every gem we had except the irradiated blue topaz, which was crap anyhow. Everything else was really investment grade. And we sold it in 2 weeks, and here's what I did. I wrote a letter that said, very candidly, we've been in this business, and we've been very proud to sell extraordinary investment grade loose gems to long-term investors and collectors at very, very, very advantageous market prices. That stated the market, as you know, has dropped. Everyone knew it. And we're sitting with an inventory that at cost, we have $20 million in. If we had sold it just at our markups, we would have sold it for whatever, $35 million. If you bought these stones in your retail quality jeweler, you would have paid aggregate probably $150 or $200 million. We are getting out of the business, not abandoning it, just the business has changed, and it's not the highest and best use of our resources anymore. We have two choices. We can liquidate it to our wholesalers and get them and let them take advantage of us, or we can sell them to you at a loss and let you benefit from us, knowing that our commitment is a long-term relationship with you. We would rather invest in you, the loss, than to somebody who really will probably never do business with again. But before we even ask you to consider it, let us describe each stone, and I described each stone because they were big and very expensive, in gemological terms. I explained it as if you were looking at it with its fiery brilliance and its color. I then said, if any of these or many of these appeal to you, we ask you to do this first. Pick up the phone and call any reputable quality jeweler you know or you can find anywhere. Describe the stone to them. Ask them approximately that kind of stone, what they would charge you to find it loose. If their quote isn't at least 40 to 50% or double, don't buy it from us. If it is, buy it with the provision we will not consider your purchase binding on your part until you've received the stone. You've seen that in all honesty we actually under-described it in its radiance and beauty, and you've taken it to that same or any other reputable jeweler you want and have it appraised. If it doesn't appraise exceptionally higher, send it back, because we've already got it sold. It's just that we won't get any goodwill and we won't benefit anybody but, you know, the dastardly wholesaler. We sold everything out. Everything, except things that I didn't think irradiated blue topaz was a very good investment, but beautiful emeralds, sapphires. But educating your way out of a problem. I sold, this is very cool. I told you, you have to indulge. My intention is always to contribute. But I have a proclivity to get tickled with things that I did that I've forgotten about. We sold $20, $30 million worth of Salvador Dali prints of Lincoln in Dali Vision. Does anybody know what Lincoln in Dali Vision is? So Salvador Dali, famous painter, very, very modernistic, and he's very wild, dead now, but very wild. He had a great big, I think he was from Spain, a great big wild mustache and a flare. He's a very, very interesting painter. And a friend of mine got the rights to all these prints of Salvador Dali's. One of his very famous ones is called Lincoln in, Lincoln in Dali Vision. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Here's the concept. There's this beautiful painting of this stunning woman standing at a window looking out. And she is unclothed, and you can see it down to the lower nap of her backbone, and a little bit of her derriere, but not very much. But she's beautiful bronze, and she's looking out. And there is a instrument that comes with it. There's like, it's done in beautiful painting, but mosaics. And if you look at this through this viewer, you see two things. You see a portrait of Abraham Lincoln on her back, and then you look a little bit more, and right in the middle of Abraham Lincoln is Jesus Christ. It's wild. And I was able to sell all these without showing a picture by just describing and educating and telling them who held its works and where all the famous art institutes that had it, and how many other collectors owned it, and describing it. But the ability to educate and describe and paint pictures is infinitely, infinitely valuable. Okay, now I want to talk about strategy in the most simplistic analogy that I can. I want to tell two stories about the same thing, a tactical version and a strategic version. I had two friends. One is deceased. One I think is still alive, but I haven't seen him for many years, who wanted to go into the simulated diamond business, cubic zirconia. It's a handmade or man-made diamond. One of them was a very brilliant copywriter, but he was a tactician, as Carlos would say, and he liked to dig deep. The other was not as good a copywriter, but he was a monster of a brilliant strategist. He liked to dig in the right manner. Tactician friend one decided he would go into this business first, and he created a company called the Beverly Hills Diamond Company, and he wrote one of the most actually extraordinarily impressive full-page ads selling a 1-carat cubic zirconium loose for, I believe, $39. And he ran it in the Los Angeles Times. And I'm not going to be exactly accurate, but the lesson will be same. The cost of it was about $25,000, and I think he brought in about $40,000. But after costs and charges and refunds, he made maybe 8 grand, and my friend was only into doing big yield things, so he folded his tent and just abandoned the concept and left. Over here, friend 2, who was enormously strategic, was looking at this and thought, wow! You know that story about the kid gets the, on Christmas Day goes out to the barn and there's the horse manure and he says there must be a pony somewhere? Well, my friend who is strategic gets really excited. The other friend doesn't understand, says do it. So friend 2 creates his version of an ad. He's not as good a copywriter. His was called Van Pliss and Tissany. It was like a take on Van Cleef and Arpels and Tiffany's, and he called it the Van Pliss Diamond. And his copy was good, but was nowhere as good as the first one. And he sold a loose 1 carat for $39, and he paid the same approximate 25 grand. But instead of bringing in $40,000, friend 2's ad only barely brought in 25. So he didn't even break even. He lost money. I could stop there, but there's a however. And the however is all defining about strategy versus tactic. So friend 1 made about 8 grand tactically and quit. Friend 2 lost about 8 grand, but started instead of quitting. When friend 1, who is the tactician, would send his loose stone out, he would just throw it in a ugly cardboard container and send it sans anything. Friend 2 put his in a beautiful jeweler's bag, put it in a simulated wood box, and had 2 documents accompanying it. Document 1 was a letter. The letter was from him as president of the company, thanking the recipient for having had enough blind faith to have invested their $39 in his Van Pliss diamond. And he prepared them for what they were going to withdraw from the bag. And he said, before you take it out, I've got to tell you something so you're prepared. And it's good. But there's an admonishment. He said, it's going to be more fiery, more brilliant, more stunning, more amazing looking than you even imagine and that I could even describe in that monodimensional advertisement. You're going to love it. However, it may appear to be smaller than you think. It's not because we've cheated you. It's because the compression and the science necessary to get that fiery brilliance has got more density. So a carat of this is going to seem a bit smaller than a 1 carat diamond. We're telling you this because the majority of our clients, when they see how much more stunning and amazing these are eager to come back to us and acquire larger stones that they then take to their jewelers and get set in earrings and rings and necklaces. And because so often that happens, we have decided to become basically a turnkey provider for you, and we now have some of the most gorgeous 5 carat and 10 carat Van Pliss stones set in beautiful 14 and 18 carat jewelry available in the catalog that accompanies this. And because we are the creator and the manufacturer, we can offer it to you at prices that are probably 40 or 50% less than your jeweler, and we encourage you to get a quote or price check it. But better than that, we are so grateful that you had enough blind faith in us that we would like to offer you the opportunity to exchange your 1 carat for double credit on anything you'd like to buy from the catalog. And to make it easier, we have included an order form and also a prepaid not a Federal Express, but a UPS container inside. Now, friend 1, tactician, spends 25 grand, makes 8, quits. Friend 2, strategist, spends 25 grand, loses 8, and makes $25 million in year 1. That's the difference between being strategic and tactical. Does that make sense to people? It's thinking totally different. Totally different. I think that's just a killer story. One of my favorite stories, and they transcend a lot of different things that I teach, so we'll go to the elements in a little while, and then I'll go through them with you. But years ago, there is and was a company called Colonial Penn. And Colonial Penn is an insurance company. And they were established, at least in great part, to create group-based insurance programs for affinity groups, organizations, associations. And they were having the hardest time selling and competing with their competition until one board member very astutely pulled an Indiana Jones. Remember yesterday I talked about the gun? He said, we're doing this all wrong. Why do we have to sell anybody? Why don't we just start our own organization and have a captive client? And they started an organization called the American Association of Retired People, AARP, so they would have a client. So, I mean, I'm trying to get you some context that you can think about a problem from many different vantage points. I want to make sure that I give you all of these examples. One of the things I'm going to talk about when we look at rules and things, and you might have looked at them last night, is testing. And we talked about testing, and the gentleman asked me a question, and it was a good question. Hopefully I answered it. But if you aren't asking your market to confirm or refute your assumptions, a lot of things, you're really making a horrible mistake. And I'll give you a couple of simple examples. When I was in the newsletter business, we would constantly test subscription prices and add-on prices. And we found that $69 for a certain newsletter outpulled $89, $109, and $59 by, I think at the least it was 300%. And because we were strategic, not only did we get more money, but we got a lot more people to go through our sequence of purchases and our ancillary services and our expensive services and our investment services and our management services. I had a client that was a large furniture dealer, and we tested 33 different ways of greeting people at the front door. No other change. Didn't change headlines, didn't change anything else, just the way we greeted people at the front door. It was big, like a $40 million company, and they had a big operation. One of those 33 different ways tripled closure. Tripled. You probably want to know what it is, right? I'll tell you. It's not what you think. Usually they go, oh, can I help you? No, and I'm just looking. And we didn't know, by the way, when you're testing, you can have assumptions, but it doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is what the market confirms or rejects. So what turned out to be the winning, embracing phrase, which made sense afterwards, but it wouldn't until you found out, was this. And what ad brought you into the store today? Now, you're thinking, why would that increase closures? Because it transferred the power through the answer from the prospect to the salesperson. You could say, well, the 5-piece living room set. Oh, did you just move into your house? Is it replacing? Are you going to move? Tell me about your furniture. All of a sudden, you're in an advisory controlling position. And it totally changed the whole dynamic of the process. But we've tested prices. We've tested combinations. We've tested risk reversals. We've tested positionings. I hope, somewhere in my PowerPoint, I'll give you a hierarchy of tests. But one of the things I didn't do, but it'll be the thing we'll give you, was do all the work I used to do on headlines. But headlines or their equivalent can change everything. Change a headline in an ad or its equivalent. By its equivalent, that can mean the first thing they read on your website or landing page or your blog, the subject line on your email, the banner on your booth at a trade show, the opening and also the description on your catalogs or brochures. The difference can be as much as 21%. times. 21 times from the same space, the same opportunity, same advertisement, the same traffic at the trade show. We get people to test how they embrace people when they walk by. And usually, not always, but usually, the denominator of improved success is something that ties to a benefit to this that is desired by the other side, or an assumption, or a provocative question that requires an engaging answer. And I will send you a link that has, as I said, about 150 different headlines, and about half of them, it actually explains in detail the psychology or the construction, not how it's constructed, but the mechanism through which it impacts the market. And the exercise you should take is when you go home, take all 150 or 200 and sit down and write 3 or 4 or 5 variations to each one as a headline. Write variations as an opening. By the way, it's the same thing as the opening phrase you use if you're calling somebody on the phone, the opening phrase you use when you're having a one-on-one sales presentation. Speaking of which, and I'm just trying to give you tests that people don't think about. Anybody or a lot of people in this room do sales presentations one-on-one where you have previously sent out a brochure? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. A lot of you. We'll tell you a funny phenomenon, and hopefully it's a little better now, but I have to demonstrate it because it's so funny. Most people, for some not idiotic but illogical reason, think that a brochure is a salesman. A brochure is really nothing more than a distillation, hopefully, of the benefits with some features in it. And by the way, most people get fixated on features, and most people who are buyers buy benefits and results and advantages. But you wouldn't allow a salesperson to walk into a prospect after he or she had gotten an appointment and be sitting either across from their desk or across their dining room table and walk in, and if this was the brochure, do that and go, would you? But that's what people do when they send a brochure out with a, pursuant to your request, here's a copy of our brochure about, it's the dumbest thing in the world. It needs to always have a compelling, a well-constructed, a benefit-oriented, proof-based, and we'll get into some formulaics in a little while, sales letter accompanying it if you're sending it out. Because this is nothing more than the distillation. And most people don't think about that. And today it's got to be translated online. But, I mean, when you think about almost everything that I say, it makes great sense. And yet most people don't do it. As I said, the idea of making success an integral part of what you do every day is so duh, and yet almost nobody does it. I told the story long ago, but it's a great illustrative one. I've got so many other ones I forget them, but I made, I don't know, it's like $50,000 a month for a year from about 20 minutes worth of change to somebody's ad. And I had a gold client, a lot of gold clients when I was younger. And this gold client was in, my first client was in the physical delivery of gold. They would send the gold to you, registered, but you'd get gold. Another client I helped did bank-financed storage of gold. So you'd buy gold and it'd be stored in a bank. And they would run ads in the Wall Street Journal, and the headlines would say, 2/3 bank financing on silver and gold. This is classic J. Abraham, but it's still such a great story that it tells it, and there's millions of other tests that I can cite, but this is the most graphically easy to demonstrate. So back then, gold was really cheap. Today it's expensive. It was $300 an ounce, and silver was $6 an ounce. It had fallen from 800 and whatever silver was at one time, 50. And when they ran these ads in the Wall Street Journal, it paid for the ad, it paid for the sales commission, they made money. And I came there and said, I don't think that ad is compelling. And they said, why? And I said, I just don't think it denominates anything. It was a declaratory statement. A lot of headlines, they don't really convey benefit or advantage. Two-thirds bank financing on silver and gold is more of a declaratory statement. What's the benefit of that? What's the advantage of that? So I sat down and for about a half an hour created a bunch of different headlines and said, let's test all these. Didn't change any of the body copy. So body copy is the same. The only thing I changed was the headline. One of the headlines they tested outpulled all the rest by 5 times. 5 times. Same space, same time, same cost, and that doesn't even factor in the repeat purchases, the referrals. And I'll tell you what it was because it denominates my point. Gold at that time was selling for $300 and silver was about $6. Their previous headline, didn't change the body at all, said two-thirds bank financing on silver and gold. And my premise and my thesis was that didn't explain to me why I should take action. My winning headline said, if gold is selling for $300 an ounce, send us just $100 an ounce and we'll buy you all the gold you want. And I had the same one for silver, 6 and 2. And we sold like mad. But it's understanding that the world really wants results, benefits, advantages. They don't want to have to think about anything. And they want to know what's the reason why. Reason why is a very universal filament to all that I stand for. I need to know the reason why I should do something or shouldn't. Why should I buy from you and not her, or not the alternative, or not buy at all? What's the pain? What's the pleasure? What's the difference it's going to make? What's the case for doing it? I've got just scribbly notes that I wrote about a bunch of different stories I wanted to tell. This is pretty cool, and the gentleman from Australia will like this. Years ago, I had a bunch of people, because I used to go to Australia, and they did really cool things. And one of them just was great fun for me. It was a software company that sold the equivalent of enterprise software to small, medium-sized businesses, and they ran full-page ads in all of the trade magazines there. And they would get a lot of leads. They got like 1,000 leads a month, but they only closed a very small percent, 2 or 3%, because their software was very expensive. And when I got to them, I said, well, you're investing almost all your money in the 98% you're not closing. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I said, I don't think small business owners and entrepreneurs are going to spend a lot of time in really following up and responding if they didn't have a felt need. The reason they're not buying is either you're too expensive, your terms aren't right, it's too many bells and whistles, something's wrong with this picture. But the wrongness has nothing to do with the lack of need. It has to do with the lack of fulfilling the need. And he said, okay, well, this is all we've got. And I said, yeah, but it's not all everybody's got. Somewhere in this vast universe, somebody's created an entry-level, pardon me, an entry-level, I don't do seminars that often, my voice has to be mitigated a little bit, an entry-level enterprise-type software for small businesses that you can get control of, or at least do a private label. And they said, we don't want to be a distributor. And I said, then don't. It's just an image of your mind. Go to them and say, you can do anything you want in the open market. We'll add a few bells and whistles and customize it, and we'll give you a 5% royalty, and we'll just have the rights to do it internally. And they did. And to make a very interesting story even more interesting, they ended up making many times more money from the downsell, the other software, than they did from their own. And their own became the lead generator, and that's what's possible if you think differently. There was another company that I helped in Australia. It was pretty cool. It was in the entry-level home business. I'm so old. I've done so many things there when I was younger. And they were selling entry-level homes, and they were using newspaper and radio to drive buyers, and it was costing them. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to give you my best memory, but it's not relevant if I'm on or off a few dollars or even $1,000, because the essence is absolutely true. I think it was costing about $15,000 for them to get a sale. and they wanted to try to either get more sales or reduce their cost. And I said, remember I talked about Willie Sutton, that's where the money is, the bank? Who's really got the highest, most concentrated source of your first-time buyers? Who can afford it? And it became the nice apartments where people were living. They're getting married, or they were living, then they got married, or they living, got married, and then they had a child. So I said, let's go to all the apartment complexes that are most desirable, because they had waiting lists, most of them. It wasn't really hard for them to fill people. Let's go to them and tell you what, we'll give you $6,000 for every sale you'll let us spawn from your organization. We'll create all the marketing. Plus, risk reversal, we'll cover any vacancies up to 6 months, because the average vacancy was about $1,000. And so it ended up costing us at most $9,000 instead of $15,000. But because they had a waiting list, we very rarely had to even pay that. And we got a faster, larger quantity. But it's thinking about where's the audience. There was one more that was pretty cool. There was a guy in one of the cities that, very cool, he bought the rights, he rented or leased the rights to ground floor office buildings downtown, because there was a quirk in the law where you couldn't do outside advertising, but you could put advertisements on the inside of the window going out. He tied up all these windows, and then he flipped the right to a third party. Speaking of that, I had a friend who was in a different business, moved to Los Angeles right when the flea market business was exploding, got the rights to the Rose Bowl. Didn't know anything about flea markets or anything else. Got the rights to the Rose Bowl. Took those rights. Found the guy who was the big flea market guy. Did a deal with him where he did all the management. He did everything, and they split profits. And my friend was making millions of dollars just for letting someone else do all the work. We call that the Tom Sawyer School of Business. Anybody that knows Mark Twain, one of his classic books was Tom Sawyer, and he was whitewashing the fence, which he was paid to whitewash the fence, and he convinced all the young kids how much fun it would be if they did it instead of him, and he supervised. And he was sitting smoking his pipe, getting paid for them whitewashing the fence. Speaking of rights, if you look in very interesting, I had an artist that did really well. He was very, very beautiful, beautiful paintings. And they're expensive, but he needed a forum, and he would feast and famine. And anybody that happened to have gone to my last mastermind, I did like a last mastermind, I don't remember, we did it 2000 or 1999 or something, and we had like, I don't know, 700-800 people, but I had about $3 or $4 million of his art all over the room. It was very spectacular and stunning, but I had a hypothesis. I said, if you can go to every conference venue that has high, affluent, impetuously capable entrepreneurs and executives, and you have them captive for 2-3 days, and your art's all over the wall, it's axiomatic you're going to sell. Somebody sold 100 or 150, and I said, why don't you go to every major city, Las Vegas, San Francisco, and do this with every venue, every organization coming, and if you don't have enough art, tie up the rights and get other people's arts. I don't know if he did it or not, but we proved it worked. He sold 6 figures at my event. But if you think about it, there was a guy who got the rights years ago to do art on the cruise ships. He didn't know anything about art and cruise ships. He just knew that it was a captive market. He got the rights. He was able to flip the rights to somebody else who knew how to do art, but he got a piece of the deal. It's very interesting. It's a way of thinking. And I'm just trying to get your mind stretched so when I explain to you some of my precepts, the young man who was here before, Kevin Halbert, his father, deceased, was a great copywriter, and he had a really great simple story that's an embellishment of the Willie Sutton, but it's great. He said, and those of you already know this, don't answer it. Let somebody else think about it. He said, let's presume we're all going to go in the restaurant business in Los Angeles. And I'm going to give each one of you one advantage you can have yourself unique. What's it going to be? And he'd go around the room, what do you want? And one guy said, well, I want the only McDonald's. I want the only restaurant at the intersection of 5 highways. I want the only pizza parlor. You can have it, you can have it, you can have it. After everybody had said what they wanted, he said, you know what I want? A starving crowd. And that's so funny, but most of us don't go to a starving crowd. One of my children, I have 7 children, worked for a large Japanese office equipment manufacturer many years ago. And he had his territory, I don't remember if it was East or West Los Angeles. And they were very, very tactical. He had a territory, and his job was to knock on doors and try to get sales of copiers and other kinds of equipment. And he was working like 70 hours and making 30 grand. And he came to me and he said, is there a better way? I said, duh. So I said, first of all, haven't they even told you what kind of scenarios, what kind of situations, convergent factors, industries? There's got to be some dynamic that's many times more probable than another to be a buyer. He goes, no. And we looked and we were able to construct that. And then I said, you're knocking on doors, and most of the time, you're not getting an appointment. The best is you got to come back or call, right? Yeah. So why don't you figure out who you want to talk to and figure out through tests a mechanism on the phone to secure an appointment and try to do it in a geographically organized way so you have 5 or 7 appointments in the same day in case some of them fail you. And then why don't you practice and develop the presentation so you know it has a higher incidence of closing. And we just kept working through all those scenarios till we got them to be more like 65,000 for 30 hours. But it's just because most people think tactically. Most people think so terribly tactically. It's just unbelievable, unbelievable. And I thought of something I was going to share, and I just forgot it. Apologies to you. I'm going to do a couple more, and then we're going to go through. One second. I want to get into some really cool things with barter, but I have a gentleman tomorrow who is my mentor who will be here, and I want to wait for that because it's the ultimate in stretching your creativity. And I want to tell you a bunch of the stories that have spawned from using barter as a vehicle to either create commerce, start relationships, supplant the need for cash, all the above, any of the above. But I think I want to tell a couple more stories, and then we're going to get into some of the yeah. So many years ago, I was working stuff out with Nightingale Conant, and I gave them an idea that turned into just a home run for them. And it's based on arbitrage. Arbitrage, anyone knows it, is gaps that nobody else sees of opportunity. So Nightingale Conant was in the publishing of audio businesses, and they started with cassettes, and they moved to CDs, and probably most of their stuff is, I would imagine, now digitally sold online. But back in the CD and the audio world, Nightingale saw their business as selling $69 and $59 courses, and if you bought one, they wouldn't try to upsell you, just try to sell you more $59 and $69 courses. And I realized that amongst the $59 and $69 course buyer, there's a lot more people that didn't feel like they got everything they wanted, and they would buy $5,000 and $15,000 seminars, and I was right. But upon developing a relationship with them, I said, you've got to figure out who else out there is missing what you're missing. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, who are you the back end for or the front end for? And they didn't quite get it, but I said, somebody needs your products either to enhance and complete the monetization of their market, or to initiate access to a market? Who are they and where's the opportunity? They never thought about that. But make a long story short, there was a company, I don't know if they're even still in business, called Fred Pryor Seminars. And Fred Pryor Seminars in the 90s and early 2000s was one of the largest live seminar training companies in the country. And they would do very low-priced, high-attendance, basically skills training, productivity, efficiency, communication, doesn't matter what. And Nightingale and Fred Pryor would do the seminar, and that'd be it. Then they'd leave. Nightingale got a hold of Fred Pryor and said, how about this? Every time you have high attendance in a city, how about if we fly into the city a collection of the programs that we have found most people who buy whatever your topic is buy, and we pay for a manpower person in the back to man a booth or a table with those on them and a credit card machine, and we'll split profits. And they split $10 million worth of profits because it was a gap. And part of what we do in life is recognize gaps we can fill. In the infomercial marketplace years ago, I was involved in it 3 different ways. One was packaging offers that were irresistible. 2 was saving offers that didn't work. And 3 was just observing brilliance and how people would convert failure to success and vice versa. So I'll give you 3 stories from the same, and then we'll try to put all this together in a moment. I would sit down with people, and we would try to figure out irresistible offers for them to make on their infomercials. And I'll never forget, there was a guy that was selling a service that was it was income tax audit protection. They were selling a service that if you got audited from your federal tax, they would provide an IRS a certified representative to represent you all the way through to the Supreme Court. And they were charging $50 for a year. And they did an infomercial and it bombed. And I said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's not enough money in it. So I said, what if we reconstitute it? And I asked them, I said, how have you been selling the service? They've been selling it with seminars. And I said, okay, well, what's the basis of the seminar? And they had 5 different seminars. One was, what are your probability of getting audited? What do you do if you get audited? What do you do not to get audited? They had like 5 or 6 topics that would draw people, and they'd sell this service. And I said, let's reconstitute it. Let's do a 3-year offer so there's enough money in it to make sense. Let's take all your seminars and record them and turn them into bonus manuals and reports that we include. Let's tell people to sign up for the service. We won't consider the service binding on their part till they've gotten all 6 or 5 reports, read them, and decided for themselves what they think their statistical interest or probability is. And if they feel comfortable, they can cancel, keep the reports, we're fine. If they don't, they've got I call it a look-back option, the best of all worlds, and we sold millions and millions and millions of dollars with it. A company, 2 different companies did something very interesting. Same thing, different companies, different applications. One was a newsletter company. One was an infomercial company. They both had marginal offers. One was a cassette set for kids to help them get better grades in school, and the title was Where There's a Will, There's an A. Good concept, but it wasn't doing well. Everything about it was left the same, except they brought John Ritter, obviously before he died, from Three's Company, and he became the spokesman. And just the addition of John Ritter tripled the yield. Tripled the yield, nothing else. They paid him like $1 a sale, but the net was so much better. And they had upsells too. A friend of mine in the newsletter business had a dog of a newsletter on entrepreneurialism. And he took the same promotion that didn't work and had it come, of all places, from Tom Bosley, who was he was the father in Happy Days years ago, but the people who wanted to be entrepreneurs at that time related to him. And just the addition of Tom Bosley's picture, name, and signature increased the yield 40%. And there's so many celebrities, neo-celebrities, old celebrities, C-celebrities that are available that you can get pretty cheap. A lot of them will allow you to test for a certain amount, and then if it works, you pay them a more expansive amount, or you pay them a variable. But it can double or triple or quadruple. I had a friend, I still have him, but I haven't talked to him, who would get all the old-time rock groups from the 70s and 80s and bring them together and do fantasy rock and roll camps. And then he would basically take all these old people, the old drummer from this group and the bassist from this group, and he'd put them together as eclectic bands, but they had stature, and then he'd book them for a private party. He's like, Jay, you want to have like the guitarist from Yes and the first guy from, you know, from Guess Who, and the guy that, you know, subbed in at Led Zeppelin? Sure, that'd be fun for my party. It's only $5,000, why not? But it's ways of thinking, ways of thinking. I got to tell a story because it's pretty cool. So I worked for I've worked for a lot of brilliant people, but two really brilliant people in my life. The guy that did Icy Hot, which is another story. It's a story that denominates marginal net worth and lifetime value, and that's really cool. But he had another distinction that was cooler. He was in the chemical business. He had a very big plant, and they did anything and everything that would repurpose his equipment. He was in the patent medicine business. He was in the pest control additive and supply business. He was in the saddlery business. He was in the automotive external treatment business, because all of this could be repurposed, the same damn equipment and system and shipping and production. And he had a brilliant strategy. He would buy old-time production companies that were on the way down, where the second or third generation inherited, and they were lazy and had no interest in it, and they were just milking it, and it's going down, down, down. So they're not buying any new equipment. They're not fully utilizing whatever they have. They might have a building they're not really using. He would get the rights to buy the business very cheap. It would be an option he wouldn't exercise until he would first pre-sell the building, all the equipment, and he would then move the product over to his production only if and after he could sell it. He would normally be either even, neutral, or ahead before he even took over the product. And then because he could integrate it in his system and through the same infrastructure, he'd make a lot of money. And that's how he got Icy Hot. He just buy old products that were doing it. I thought that was just really brilliant. This is Indianapolis. And also Indianapolis, there was another guy, and they were, you could call them bottom feeders, but it's not really it. I think they were just very astute, strategic, ethical, opportunistic thinkers. There was a guy that owned an eclectic collection of companies, and when I was younger, and I can't remember the year, there was a publishing company based in Philadelphia that in the first half of the 20th century was the dominant force. It was called Curtis Publishing. And Curtis Publishing published back then the Saturday Evening Post, a magazine called Holiday Magazine, a magazine called Gentleman's Quarterly, just a bunch of stuff. And Saturday Evening Post was the hugest. It had at its peak something like 6 or 8 million subscribers, and they had Norman Rockwell paint the covers on every one of their issues, and they were just wonderful. But the magazine business, long before the internet, got in trouble because it was always predicated on advertising, and most of them would lose money on the subscription or break even. And Curtis Publishing went into bankruptcy, and my employer was brilliant. He made a deal to take over. Now, magazines are very complicated things, very interesting from a tax standpoint, but they have a lot of deferred liability. I can sell you a 3-year and then resell you another 3-year, and now I owe you 6 years, and I've got the money and I long ago spent it, but I haven't earned it. So from a tax standpoint, it's pretty cool. But from a liability standpoint, it's not so cool. And when I'm out of money, it's really not so cool. And they went bankrupt because they owed a lot of people a lot of fulfillment and they couldn't pay for it. And my guy said, I won't buy the business, but I will buy the assets. And I will take over without any guarantee that I can fulfill, but I will buy the assets. And he bought the assets for almost nothing. The assets included the active subscribers who were active before they stopped publishing, the expired subscribers, the archives that were the articles, and the archives that were all the covers of the Norman Rockwell prints. And he bought it for almost nothing. The first thing he did was he knew that a huge portion of the subscribers to Saturday Evening Post loved it. It was like, I mean, for its time, it was very contemporary and it was very cool stories. Sort of like Reader's Digest when it was at its peak. Those of you old enough to know what Reader's Digest was at its peak. And my guy sent a letter, many letters actually, to the subscribers, heartfelt and empathic, saying, I just took over the assets. I did not take over the responsibility and the right to fulfill your subscription. You sort of lost that, but I sense you'd probably love to have the magazine again, and we're going to restart it, and it seems tragic not to try to acknowledge and reward you for what you've done, so we want to make you a special offer if you want to trust us again. We're a different organization, and we'll give you a wonderful, wonderful 3-year offer. Make a long story short, he brought in something like $10 million right away. Then he got a full-time attorney, he paid almost nothing, who took all the Norman Rockwell prints, and they went to everybody they could, and they licensed them for greeting cards and towels and candles and calendars. Then he took all the archives, and he repackaged them into books. And then he took all the ads that he couldn't sell, and he had a bunch of consumer products that he would promote himself, and then he could go to retailers and say, look, we're being advertised nationally in Saturday Evening Post, so he got distribution, and as soon as he got full distribution, he would sell the companies. Now I'm going to give you one more piece. Sort of interesting, isn't it? So one of the magazines was Holiday Magazine, which was a third-rate back then magazine. And it's how I met the guy that you'll meet tomorrow, the Barter guy. So most of the, like Travel and Leisure, they were monthlies. Holiday was a quarterly. Had a lot of problems. First problem, it wasn't number 1 or number 2, it was number 3. Second problem, it didn't come out that often. Third problem, it was way low on the advertiser list of advertisement. Third problem, or fourth, is if an advertiser bought it, they would negotiate like mad, and they would pay almost nothing. And fifth or fourth problem is because it was a quarterly and it wasn't that important, they wouldn't pay the bill for months and months. So cash flow sucked, the margins sucked, everything sucked. And they were having trouble selling. And I was there looking for anything I could do that was variable-oriented and profit-oriented. They said, well, see what you can do with this. And I was sort of searching around, and I saw that they had been approached. Well, the first thing was they had done some trades in the past, and they were mismatched trades. They would take like a bunch of credit at an incredible boutique resort in St. Croix, but had nowhere to get there, and they would be stuck with it. And I got rid of all that and sold it to the guy here. But I realized, and this is very important, the rack rate, meaning the full retail rate of a one-page advertisement, was about $10,000. The incremental cost of that page was about $1,000, 10 times a markup. But they never got $10,000. Most of the advertisers would hammer them to $2,000 or $3,000 and wouldn't pay them for 6 or 9 months. So it was actually very difficult. But I realized that we could go to high-end advertisers, the foreign airlines, the Sonys, the 5-star hotels, and we could trade credit dollar for dollar with them strategically for their products or services. And I started doing that, but with a caveat. If I would go to AJ, and AJ had, maybe he ran a Ritz-Carlton or an airline or a desirable resort that was easy to get to normally. And I'd say, okay, I'll trade you $10,000 for $10,000, or you want an ad every quarter, I'll trade you $40,000, just give me the $40,000 now. And I'd say, but I have to confirm it with management. And why I did that was before I would ever confirm your trade, I would first pre-sell it to somebody for at least 50 cents on the retail dollar. Now, I'm going fast, but let me tell you what we did. We would take magazine pages that we couldn't sell for much of anything, and even if we sold it, we couldn't get paid for months and months, and we finally got paid after we had to fund everything. We were basically breaking even and just sort of churning money. And instead, I was getting prepaid 5 times my cost, 3 to 6 months early, and sometimes a year in advance. And it was a very lucrative profit center. We were able to go to car dealers and things like that and create profit centers like that. We would go and say, so, because most people don't know, anybody here a car dealer? Anybody know a car dealer? I don't mean, well, you know that a car dealer, they'll sort of humorously to me say, oh, it's a store. They call it a store. But a dealership can generate 100 million, 200 million, a lot of dollars go through it, don't they, Carlos?
Just to give you an example, a dealer in Panama is a small country, right? They are doing $600 million. And the number one dealer here in the United States is in 18 or 19 billion dollars.
Yeah, people don't realize it. But with that stated, and this is a really cool concept, most people look at barter in a contemptuous way. I look at it as the ultimate financial leverage for either having no cash or spending cash you've already lost. If you are a car dealer, or any kind of business, but a car dealer is a very interesting example, and you've got a car that has a sticker of $50,000, and I don't care if your margin's only 12%. If you're going to spend money on your dealership, let's say you're going to buy carpet, or you're going to buy maintenance, or you're going to buy chemicals, and you can instead trade that car, well, even if you trade it 1-to-1, which means dollar for dollar, you're saving 12%. But because it's hard and more desirable than softer goods, which can be chemicals or services, you can normally trade at a multiple. You can trade sometimes 2-to-1, sometimes 1.5-to-1. I mean, I told you this. I've got a service. My service, if I were going to bill you for a day, is 50 grand. My wife has a 6-carat diamond ring, which was about a day of my time. My backyard has exquisite furniture, which was a day of my time. My beach house, when I bought it 20 years ago, we made a list of everything we needed, from TVs to carpet, and we just had people on our list, and I traded an hour of my time for the carpet. And I bought a couple of years ago a classic 930 Porsche from somebody in Virginia, and I went to my list, and I had a car transport company that had come to one of my programs, and I said, want to trade an hour of my time for bringing this Porsche over? And they said, sure. I mean, I would have written a check. Now, you got to treat it. I do 1099. I don't do much barter anymore because you should only do it for things you either want and would buy for dollars or things that you can put through your business. But I traded years ago, as one of the most interesting trades in the world. I traded $3 million of my services and products for $3 million of advertising on a radio chain. I got 40,000 ads on 400 stations. And they got from me 4 things, which all helped me. I created a newsletter they sent to all 6,000 of their advertisers around the country. And I valued that at, I don't know, $500,000 a year. I created gift baskets they gave to all their advertisers of my stuff every year. And it cost me like $1, and I got value of it about 100-to-1. I did vignettes they ran on the show and sold advertising to, but it helped me. I would go into markets for them and do high attendance programs for either their advertisers or prospective advertisers, and they would promote my brand. And I got a tax write-off in year one of a lot of money. I had to deal with it in year two. But barter is very interesting, and tomorrow we'll talk about it. Is this intriguing you a little bit? Does it get your mind going a little bit? I got about 3 more, and then we're going to go through some more granular stuff. Pretty interesting. Target's pretty smart. They find, and it's not just Target, but they could sell their generic jeans for X, right? But instead, they can go and find a one-time hot designer who's not really hot anymore, but still has residual value, like, what's his name, Massimo, or people like that. Give them a royalty, and instead of selling their jeans for X, now sell their jeans for 140% of X and give 5% to Massimo and be 35 or so percent or whatever the net is ahead. That's pretty interesting, don't you think? And I had a friend one time who made millions of dollars. He was an artist. And he would go to houseware companies, and he would go to white goods companies, and he would go to all kinds of companies and say, okay, you've got your plain vanilla, and it wasn't neat vanilla, but your non-decorated item. Let me create a design for it, and let's put that design on a test group, and let's see if they will sell either more or higher, and whether it does either or, I don't want a dime, I just want 5% of the sales if it works. And he would speculate because he knew that statistically if he did it enough, it would work enough, and he made a lot of money. When 800 numbers first came out, and this is going to sound hilarious to you, but it was a pretty interesting story. There's 3 derivatives of it. No one knew how powerful it was. A few people experimented. It used to be that when you bought anything, and I'm dating myself, but anyone my age or older will know this, when you bought anything from anybody on the phone, you had to pay the toll charges. You just dial, like if you call in California, you dial 310 and you pay the $2. 800 numbers transformed that. And in the beginning, when it was free, it liberated people to buy in like a scary sort of almost a fanaticism, but most people didn't know that. A couple of people who knew that would go to everybody they could find who was doing direct dial, and they'd say, how about this? We'll use our 800 number. We'll pay the pro rata cost of your space to replace your phone number with ours, and all we want is half of the increased profit above what you're normally doing. And they made a fortune. I had a friend when I was doing Entrepreneur Magazine. When I started there, Entrepreneur Magazine had an order department where people would call in, and they had people who took orders. Operative word is taking orders. And I had a friend who was one of the progenitors of call centers. He understood how to become sales makers rather than an order taker this long ago. And he went to me and said, I've got a simple proposition. I'll pay to replace your whole order department with my people. I'll absorb all the cost. Whatever you've been averaging is yours. I just want half of the upside. And he made 50 grand a week. So there's a lot of interesting ways of looking at a situation opportunistically as long as it's ethical. I'm just trying to tell some stories to get your mind going. Now, I need a minute because I need to find the right. I could tell a lot more stories, but I think this is enough to get your brains lubricated, isn't it? Okay, I've got something like 95 other ones here I can hit you with. Oh, I was going to tell my entrepreneur story too because it's pretty interesting. So it's old, but a lot of the old ones are very crystalline clear. So I came to Entrepreneur Magazine in the 70s. And it really was not a magazine. It was an association. It was called International Entrepreneur Association. And they literally were a membership-based group. They had about 35,000 members. They were paying about $100 a year. And they would get for their membership some stuff, a plaque and some discount cards. But mostly what they got every month was a magazine-looking membership newsletter that fundamentally was focused on one thing. It would have about a 20 to 35-page overview research assessment of an emerging small business opportunity that was worthy of consideration. And back then, they would like soup restaurants, tune-up shops, yogurt shops, all kinds of things. And it would be a pretty good report. It would assess the state of the industry, the future, the startup cost, who the good franchisors were, how to do it yourself, what the risk was, what the capital investment was, and stuff. That's all they did. And they were struggling. And when I got there, they had a bunch of really cool archival reports they did nothing with. And I took them, and we added to each report what I'll call worthwhile boilerplate. In other words, stuff you'd need to know in any business. How to get permits, how to hire people, fundamental management of a small group of employees, fundamental marketing, and we would turn them into startup manuals. And we ended up selling these things for up to $59 and no lower than $39 a piece. And in year one, I think I sold, it was just under 300,000 of these, just by repurposing what we had. And when we got enough of them, I was able to then amalgamate them categorically. We'd have startup manuals for service companies, restaurant companies, low risk, high risk, franchise type. And we just repurposed it and repurposed it and repurposed it. And then we would take the advertising in our magazine, which we priced outrageously high because at our time we were the world's most expensive magazine. I think we had a face value of $20 because we didn't try to sell it. We wanted it to have high perception. And so we asked an outrageous amount for our advertising pages, and almost nobody ever bought it. But I would trade it to information companies, publishers, cassette companies. This is back when cassettes. And we would take delivery of our merchandise and have it shipped on the road because we did conferences everywhere. So I would trade a page that cost us almost nothing for maybe $15,000 worth of cassettes or books. I wouldn't have them sent to our offices. I'd have them sent to our next road show in Philadelphia or whatever. I would trade 5 or 6 pages, so I would trade our whole inventory cost and send it to, we'd have a big booth in the center of our conference where everything we sold was pure profit. There's a lot of ways of thinking of things. That's probably enough to start you. Give me a moment. I'm gonna find the right pages, but I think, let me see my little notes here, pardon me. And at the end of the day, I'm going to actually let you ask questions, but no question is allowed unless it's a general question for the betterment of the entire audience. I'm not going to do private consults, and we're doing something on the 4th day, which you're welcome to. Let me look at it, because Laura, find me the first thing I want to do is find that list of the 28 or 30 elements. I think, okay, go in here, do this. Go to page 6, oh, not page, I'm sorry, I can't read the thing. Go to, okay, it's it's either 384 or 94 or 64. It's 28 universal strategies. Now, this is screwed up, but it's not screwed up somewhere in your book. It's aggregated, and really it should be segregated because these are the totality, and they're not the totality, but from a previous PowerPoint there, the most high-performing generic ways to get the 3 ways improved: more clients, larger unit of sale, more frequency, but they're all aggregated here, which is okay because you can use them interchangeably. A lot of what I teach goes, I mean, like what I've just shared with you, it may seem like I'm talking about testing, or it may seem like I'm talking about strategy, or it may seem like I'm talking about barter, but there's an integration of all of those, and what I'm trying to really do is turn you into an aggregated, integrated, multifaceted, strategic, nonlinear thinker. And we're going to do another attempt at a Skype with somebody in a few minutes, and then tomorrow we're going to have Carlos' son, who's brilliant, and we're going to have one more person. Okay, so I'm going to go through these, but I'm going to disclaim and exclaim. It's not organized the way it is in a part of your workbook. In the part of your workbook, I think it's one of the exercise portions. It isolates them categorically. But as I said, you can apply most of these across all boundaries, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to give you a working, rapid pace understanding of each of them so that it has context. So not in order, but if you're looking at how to increase the number of clients, the easiest and the no-cost way to do it is by generating referrals. Most companies, and I don't want to do it here, but when we used to do big seminars, we would ask for a show of hands of how many people's business was from 20 to 100% driven by either word of mouth or referrals. And surprisingly, it was very substantial. And we would actually canvass representative groups that had raised their hand and say, okay, well, how much is it as a percentage? And what's the dollars? And it would blow your mind. 30%, $500,000. 60%, $2 million. And we'd have them all stand. And I'd say, okay, remain standing if you have in place right now in your business at least one formalized, systematized, standardized, referral-generating strategy that is adhered to continuously by everybody whenever the convergent forces occur, whether it's at the time of a sale or at whatever it is. And 95% would sit down. They didn't have even one. And then it's okay, stay standing if you have two. 95% of the remaining 4 people would sit down. 3, everyone would sit down. Well, because we've done so many programs, we uncovered 93 different referral generating programs. Do we have them in here? The referral generating programs? No? Are they not in here? Doesn't matter. If they're not here, I'll put them up for you. We have distillations of them that are really good mind. They're not fully expounded, but I used to get people to come to the mics, only who came to the old programs, and say, okay, if your business is generated heavily by referral strategies, share with everybody how you do it and what the key elements are. And we basically compress that into a collection, and there's 93 of them, and we will put it up for you because we've got them somewhere on a website. But if you don't have referral, somebody say something?
That's awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, it's already on it? I didn't even know that. See, oh, you already have it. So take that back. Never mind. But if you don't have if you don't get a lot of referrals, as Carlos said, that's a designation that you don't give a lot of value, isn't it? If you get a lot of referrals and you're not doing it strategically, think about this. Any effort, any time, any money you spend on any other form of client generation, marketing, selling seems ludicrous when you realize that a referral-generated buyer buys quicker, trusts more, negotiates less, is more profitable, buys more often, buys more things, is more enjoyable to deal with, and costs nothing. Why in the world, if that's possible and there's a meaningful supply that you're not accessing, would you possibly spend more or all of your time on advertising or pay-per-click or anything else until and unless you've fully exhausted that? Doesn't make any sense, does it? So you should consider referral generation wherever possible. Acquiring clients at a break-even up front and making profit on the back end. And I have Stories galore. Stories galore. But the concept is when you know the lifetime value, the predictable revenue that will evolve from a transaction or a product or a type of buyer or a category or source, and you have any multiple transactional product sales, services, anything, this is going to sound axiomatic, but the faster you get the first sale, guess what? The faster you get the second. And the key to everything is starting a relationship, lowering the barrier of entry. So breaking even on the front end can mean a lot of different things. It can mean selling the first transaction or an entry-level transaction low and not making any profit. It could mean spending all the profit you'd normally keep for yourself on marketing or advertising or selling. It can mean using the profit to pay to package in some irresistible additional product, service, or bonus. It can mean any of those. I don't know that they do it anymore, but for years and years and years, there were book clubs and CD clubs and DVD clubs, and you'd get 10 records or 10 CDs or 10 DVDs for 4 cents. Now, do you think they figured out how to make a profit on that? Or do you think that statistically they had figured out that enough of the people will buy not just a lot more, but will migrate to other product categories, clubs? But none of that happens if you don't have systematic drivers. And Teddy, if I have time, I'll have you talk about a sales ascendancy something tomorrow if you're here, because Teddy is really good at that online, and most people don't have any kind of a systematic way to migrate, gestate, progress people, and it's just happenstance, and that's the greatest tragedy in the world when you acquire somebody. But breaking even on the front end is probably even today. Online, a lot of people sort of get it, but most conventional entrepreneurs don't understand it. I think I told you a couple stories, but I'll tell you again. The guy with the investment coin newsletter and the coin business had never put the two together. He would only run ads for his coins, for his newsletter, if he triple grossed. He had to make 3 times or he'd stop until I showed him the value. And we underwrote and lost money putting out 250,000 or whatever number of subscriptions we did for a year because we made $25 million on all the sales that resulted. I had a very interestingly closed-minded doctor a couple years ago that I was trying to help, and I couldn't get through to him. He would run half-page ads in the Los Angeles Times on Mondays because they had a health section. And he was a wellness doctor, restorative medicine. And he would only run ads if he made a profit. And I said, have you ever looked at the evolution of the people that came he never had? And I looked at him, and it was something like, at break even on every ad, he was accruing something like, and again, it doesn't matter if I'm exactly right, the essence is totally right. He was accruing in the future. I think every time he would break even, just break even, that would mean he would get 10 new patients. Of the 10 patients, they broke down to 4 would be for treatments that would spend a couple $1,000s each time. 3 would be people who were worth $10,000 a year. 2 would be, it was outrageous, but he couldn't get past his mind that he wasn't making money on the acquisition. It was the most hilarious thing in the world. Finally, I had to stop trying to help him because he just said, I get it, but I just can't do it. Okay, but the more you understand that as a strategist, you're playing a long-term game. And the name of the game is to acquire the right quantity and quality of buyers you want for the sequence of transactions you are trying to fulfill. And if your sequence is limited, it's to question the business, like Socrates said, and see if you can add more to each end. If you have lower barriers of entry, you'll get more people to start. If you have more expensive and advanced items at the top, You get people to go longer. When we used to do our, and the driving force, and I haven't done preeminence yet, but the driving force is intention. Everybody isn't satisfied with just the basic. There are certain people that want, need, and deserve more. We used to do the big 5,000 and 15,000, and we would always get 30 or 40 people that wanted a $25,000 or $40,000. You know, tomorrow we're going to do bunches of rounds of little questions, but we used to do 2-hour, total interventional hot seats, and it was to their benefit because it was cheaper than spending $50,000 privately with me. But you have to know that they deserve that, and if you don't have that, doesn't mean you can't get and acquire access to that and acquire access to that for them in a way that is profitable to you, because if you know they're going to need and want and try to find it themselves, and if you're preeminent, you want their best interest, and they may make a bad decision left to their own devices, and you can get them a better quality, better quantity, better integration, better price, then it's shameful not to keep adding. You had a question. Wait a minute, you're supposed to tell me, give me a mic, remember?
I can talk loud.
No, he's got to record it if it's a good question. I don't care how loud, it'd be a disservice to everybody else. Go ahead.
Actually, Proactive went negative for like a year or two.
Yeah, and Guthrie Ranker is very smart. I'll tell you how humiliated I am. Guthrie Ranker came to me for help when they were doing $10 million, and I was doing like 20, and I didn't think I liked that business model. They started just doing front-end stuff, Tony and things like that, and they came to the realization, number one, there's no money in it. Number two, you live promotion to promotion, which doesn't make any sense. So they created things like Proactive and a bunch of continuity products that they wouldn't make any money on the acquisition. But first of all, the product had to perform, and their products are very good. I mean, my kids get, to his credit, Bill Guthrie and Greg send me, I've got a whole room full of Proactive that just keeps coming, and my little pimply-faced kids won't use it, but I got a lifetime supply of Proactive that just keeps every month coming gratis. They just keep sending it to me. But yeah, and they were doing like $1 billion, but they did $1 billion because they lost money on the acquisition. But I mean, it depends on the game you're playing. One of my heartfelt desires is to challenge and propel and inspire and cajole each one of you not to accept being little, and I don't mean little in small, I mean little in thinking. Because it's if you add value, it's a disservice to the market that should have it. If you don't add value, it's a disservice to the market to stay in business because you're just sucking oxygen out of the category. So that's a soul-searching decision. Yes?
Okay, Mayan. Okay. Does the back end necessarily have to be directly related to the front end? And if it's not, do you have to do the job of connecting the dots for the consumer so that they get that it's related?
The answers, respectfully, are no and yes. You just asked that question. Did you want me to embellish? That's another question. Would you like me to comment? Okay, well, you just asked two questions. First of all, yes, you can sell. I was experimenting with my market one time, and we got 850 people to become credit card merchant salespeople. But if you're going to take, first of all, start with the realization. And we're going to get into trust building sometime today or tomorrow. I don't remember the sequence of the slides, but assuming your market trusts you, assuming your market trusts you that you have the right intention, meaning their best interest, assuming you understand the critical importance of communication and acknowledgement, your market is represented of either or both, men and women, or boys and girls, and they are human beings with a multitude of needs and desires and problems, aren't they? And those needs and desires and problems are far transcendent than whatever product or service you sell. So there's probably a level of lunacy where it's not practical to go too far, to this way or that way, but within reason. If, for example, you sold cooking things, but you said, I bet there are a lot of people that would love to learn about yoga or would love to go on a cruise or be part of a wine. I don't know. But just offering it without, everyone should think, and this is a very good guiding overlay. I think most often in terms of the Panama or the Suez Canal, where you're trying to get a boat from one ocean to the other, and it's very impossible to do that. So you've got to take them through a series of progressive locks. And the person that I was talking about, the deceased copywriter, Gary Halbert, used to tell a wonderful story. It's a good visual as well. Anybody ever seen a tugboat pulling a great big oil tanker? So you got this tugboat that's 1 story tall pulling an oil tanker that's 20 stories tall. Now, you probably don't, but I wonder about things like this. The rope's like that big. Do you really think you can figure out how you're going to get that rope across the bow 20 stories up? You think you could get a rope to the top, just from here to the top of this building with one fell swoop? The way they do it is they shoot over the bow a real gossamer little line. And attached to that is a little larger line. And attached to that is a little larger line. And attached to that is a little bigger. And finally, attached to it is a bigger one. And that should be a metaphoric reference to you for how to migrate people throughout in any way, whether it's directly or indirectly. And again, there's a lot of scenarios here. I just want to go through stuff for you. So guaranteeing purchase through risk reversal. We've talked a bit about that, but somewhere in our, find me what slides have the risk reversal stuff? 816. Can you go, remember where we are, but go to 816. This is big enough that I'll divert. You don't really care, do you, AJ? You're having a good time. I may make a mockery fool of myself on stage in public, and Carlos may be humiliated and pack his bag and go back to Chicago, but you don't really care because you got nowhere else to be till you can't change your ticket anyhow, right? That's all that matters. We're having a good time. Beat's working. Okay. He's having fun, aren't you? Look at that smile. I love it. There is this gentleman that cleans the restrooms and the hall, and he is this beacon of joy. And he is so evocative of happiness. And you look at him, you go, wow, it's almost contagious. Okay, so if this is correct, this is going to be a little quick a little side trip treatise on risk reversal because it's powerful enough. So click the next slide for me. Okay, so there's 4 types, a lot of types, but 4 types of risk reversal. Complete money-back guarantee, better than money-back guarantee, partial money-back guarantee, pay after product service performs, pay after you profit. And you can do a lot of variations, but a quick example. And by the way, I need to demonstrate dimensionality. It might be forthcoming, but let's say that I was in the supplement business, and I don't know all the rules and regs that govern it right now, but let's say that I was selling a unique nutrient-based supplement that has a multitude of attributes that could impact a broad array of health. And I can legally say what I'm going to say. I may or may not, but I want to make a point. So I could say, buy my supplements, and I'll give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. And that's a guarantee. Or I could say, try my supplements for 30 days. Follow the very simple regimen. Take 1 in the morning right before breakfast, 1 right at lunch, and 1 right before you go to bed. And if you can't honestly say that within those 30 days or before, you aren't, then you go dot, 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 drop down bullet, sleeping like a baby, getting comments from your friends that you look so much more vital and refreshed, sensing that your stress levels reduced, feeling more energy and focus and concentration than you might have had before, having your family and your coworkers enjoy you more, having a better sex life, and on and on. If you can't honestly say that the majority of those or all those aren't becoming evident, we don't feel we deserve to keep your money, so we won't. Just tell us we aren't fulfilling those, and we'll send it back to you. Is that a little better than 30-day money-back guarantee? So I'm trying to show you what you can do with this, but I'm not trying to get too deep. Better than money-back guarantee. You give them something, they get to keep that even if they ask for their money back. I've seen people do double your money-back guarantee with cash. You give them something more valuable than even the product the first time because you want to start a relationship. You know, when we did the first really cool, those of you who ever came to any of my programs, the early ones, we would send $10,000 worth of grounding material, and our deal would be, look, if you think this is crap, call and cancel and keep it. We trust you, to be honest. We got killed a little bit, but we got rewarded a lot. So you can do better than money-back guarantee. Partial money-back guarantee. I did a program years ago that was designed to teach people how to be marketing consultants. My proposition was if you adhere to all the training, if you participate on all the teleconference sessions, if you follow the very basic directives and you document it and you fail to earn X, we will give you back a refund up to 100% pro rata on whatever you did. So it's a pro rata partial. And I'm going to just give you a couple of scenarios. Pay after your product performs. My wife has had bunion surgery and it's not working, and she's having some problems. And she got it's an electronic bone stimulator. And they delivered it, and they said, we'll bill you later. If it doesn't work, you can get credit for this against your insurance deduction. It's like a no-brainer. Like a no-brainer. When I work for people all the time for clients, it's like if you really know you're going to perform more often than not, and you're dealing with situations where either the cost of the product service is so low relative to the yield, or the future purchases are so lucrative that it doesn't matter and you can afford to wait to bill them or wait to process or perform and then get paid, it's pretty damn impressive because you stand out, you start a lot more people, you win more often than not, but it also has, there's a predicator. I believe you always have to put performance on both sides. I used to be much more liberal. Today, because society is, they're not untrustworthy, but it's just the ethos factors have changed. I don't think their ethos definition is quite as lofty as it used to be, so you have to impose certain mutual performance, which I don't think is wrong. I mean, you have to do your part. You have to, this is useless if you don't use it. And you can say, look, if you do this and this with me together and it doesn't do this, I'll do that. Or I won't charge you if you do that. We'll still do performance-based marketing, but we make somebody commit to resources they're going to commit and timelines and penalties. Because it's not worth speculating on my side if I have no assurance you won't do your part. So I'll just give you a couple of the references. This is just the three facets. Money, complete refund, plus a bonus incentive. It's a little, it's not exactly totally lucid. And the third one is to realize the emotional risk. When we get into preeminence, you'll see that people don't want to look bad. They don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to feel like they got taken advantage of. So being able to assure me that that's being overcome as well is very important in anything you do. So you say, and if you think you're going to, don't think that there's anything silly about trying this. Everyone who's tried it probably thought that at first, but we have so many. You want to reassure me. One of the keys to powerful connection is preemptive communication. And this goes to preeminence to demonstrate, I feel what you feel. I understand what you're thinking. I understand what it's probably like to be in your shoes. I get it. I get it. That's why, and it's not manipulation. It's the opposite. It's a demonstration that I really have empathic, appreciative understanding and respect for who and where you are. Next. Simple reversal. This is not perfect, but it was a formula we did years ago. So risk reversal, step one. What in either dollars and cents is, and you have to, I create things with the absolute expectation that I'm not dealing with a bunch of linear monkeys. And by that I mean I think people by this time in a relationship with me understand you have to adopt, adapt, extrapolate. So if you say, well, mine doesn't deal in money, okay, scratch and put something else in its place. But in this example, what in dollars and cents is the best reported testimony, case study, measurable, quantifiable feedback you've gotten from satisfied clients and buyers? And if you aren't aggressively and continuously trying to get testimonials, case studies, insightful understanding of what the performance dynamics are, what you do, shame on you. Click. What is the penalty to your client or prospect of staying static where they are now? If you're not going to start trying to lose weight, you're not trying to get healthy, you're not going to try, remember I told you, and it wasn't me trying to sell, you're already here, but honest to goodness from the heart. If you have a lifestyle business and you think it's going to stay constant, you and your family are going to be in for a very shamefully rude awakening, because this concept of asymmetric, geometric impact goes both ways. And it's really cool when it goes up, but it's not cool when it goes down. So being able to demonstrate to me with not disdain, but with empathic concern that I really understand. And you may not know that there's a huge price you're paying for not going forward. I didn't see you. Have you been here all this time?
No, I still have the same problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're well. I talked about you. That's good, good. So what's the penalty? And a penalty can be, what are you losing out on? What are you not getting? What is the physical, financial, health, societal? It can be anything you want. And we when I was doing the housing in Mexico, we came up with a concept, and a lot of these are integrative. It was called the Homex view. It was an articulation. I may have said this the other day. We believe every family that deserves a better life should have a better life. Every husband and wife that deserves a happier marriage should have a happier marriage. Every child of yours who deserves a safer, more successful future should have it. Every family that deserves a secure retirement should have it. Everybody, and we would project this desire, but implicit in it was the opposite. And so there's lots of different ways. I'm not trying to give you the exact, tactical way to execute it. I'm just saying here's some technique. Next. What's the competitor's most powerful and superior guarantee or not? And how can you favorably outperform it, overcome it, improve it, one-up it? Next. What's the minimum-based, bare-bones expectation, performance-wise or result-wise or advantage-wise or outcome-wise or experience-wise or sensory-wise that somebody can get from favoring your business, product, service, and starting to deal with it, as specific as you can legally and clinically. And clinical doesn't mean I'm just using it for reference, adapt, adopt, and extrapolate. Next. What's the biggest tangible minimum guarantee that you would be willing to warrant to somebody in writing? in your ad, in your transaction that's legal. That isn't going to have you be taken away by a bunch of guys in bad-fitting black suits with white shirts. Next. Yeah, so 90% of the business put the risk on the, should say client. We just basically try to get you to be anytime two people come together, risk is involved. Somebody's got to take the first step. Somebody's got to invest first. Yeah. So 90% of the business put the risk on the
property manager who advertises in our area, $1,000 to switch your home to be under his management.
Anytime two people come together,
we've got to do this. You know, $1,000 that's fantastic.
Is involved.
And she said,
somebody's got to take the first
but you know
step.
what if he's not good?
Somebody's
I'm like,
got to.
our current property manager is pathetic. So, like, there was a little bit of risk in moving, but the $1,000 just completely outweighed it. So we switched over, and
what happened?
Well, we switched over, and it was fantastic. He completely understood lifetime value. The only condition he had was, look, if you were to switch away within a certain period, then
you can be penalized.
Yeah, you get back
money.
But
I mean, that's mutual performance. It's like, hey, I'll do this for you. All I ask is you do this for me, and if I breach it, you have a right to leave. No, but these are pretty cool concepts. I hope that I'm trying to take abstract and make it more and more tangible. Is it making sense? Cool. Next. Yeah, whenever you do risk reversal, you'll get some people will exercise it. That's okay. I mean, this is not a risk reversal just because I want to do what I'm going to do, and if you don't like me, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be here. But when we were in the business, and I did it all the time, we took more risks, and we got burnt a little bit. We got burnt on people who just wanted the bonuses. We got burnt a little bit at people who come to the seminars. But the stuff was so good, people would come back and say, I feel so terrible, I used your stuff, I didn't pay for it, and I got to reinvest. But we also got burnt a little bit by carrying the terms over 12 months. But all that burn combined was infinitesimal compared to the $250 million of seminars we did. Yes, sir.
Interesting point.
Well, go ahead.
We do supplement business, which is interesting. And we have a refund rate. What we're doing now with the refunds, when they call in for refunds, we're asking them if they will give them half the money back and they can keep the product to stop them having to go through the refund
Does that work?
process. And this has taken about 30% off our refunds.
And you said you've used a lot of my principles.
We use all of the
And
principles.
you said it's worked.
But that one, particularly when they call in for a refund, just to say, look,
That's
you can
incredible.
keep
I
the
like
product,
that.
and
Yeah,
we'll
I mean,
give you half the money.
and they like that, and they have a higher propensity to stay in
Well,
using
they stay in the game and they rebuy.
It's very
which is
smart.
Kind of interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, the key to all this, and I will go back tomorrow to the beginning slides where I talked about outthinking people, because I don't have any problem repeating myself 1,000 times because I don't think most people hear what's being said. I'm not criticizing you all. I'm saying, like I talked about yesterday, stopping and reflecting on what happened in a conversation. Thinking differently is your advantage. But thinking differently, as Carlos says, without action it's a theoretical win. It's a Pyrrhic victory. Thinking and acting and monitoring the result of the action and adjusting is where the big reward comes from. Next. I gave enough. Let me see. I don't think there are any there. Is there anything else? Okay. I guess there are. Wow. Okay. So this is from another one. I didn't realize this. Okay. See, I had Laura build it when I was gone. Okay. So these are some examples from other ones. Flooring specialist. Stay on board for 12 months and not made a profit over and above the fees paid, then we'll refund your difference. I think it's a company that sold carpet to carpet companies, and they had a sales plan. 50 new retailers. Okay, there you are. Okay, I'm right. Go ahead. I didn't see the results. Stupid me. Yeah, I had it's pretty interesting. I had a psychiatrist in Bakersfield who built a multi-million-dollar practice. And he dealt with supremely depressed people. And I gave him a strategy to test. I said, don't do it. And you should never do anything system-wide because it may not work one second age. Okay? And I said, try it out and see if it works. And he tried it out, and it was very powerful. And the concept was he would go to all the referring agencies and people and say, look, if you got somebody who's in this deep of depression, coming to me the first time and spending $150 is only going to exacerbate the problem. Why don't I buy them the first consultation, and let's just see if we're compatible, if I think I can help them, if they feel comfortable. If they don't, I don't want to add to their problem. If they do, I think I can really make a difference. And he got like landslide. Go ahead, what were you going to say?
I've been using
Wait 1 second. Go ahead.
I've been using risk reversal for 15 years maybe, and I never had to return money to anybody. But
Tell everybody what you do.
I own a car wash.
Are you in the valley, aren't you?
I was in a valley.
Now where are you now?
I buy and sell car wash. I just turn them around within a year and sell them.
So you buy and flip?
Exactly. But I flip by increasing the value, which using all your techniques, your strategies.
Yes.
But basically, for over 15 years, I've been using risk reversal. We never had to return money. But what it does, it makes us, we are able to sell at a higher price bracket because of risk reversal. And then our staff are held at higher, we perform at higher quality because of the risk reversal.
It's very good, and everything flows from it if it's inculcated into your whole organization. That's a great insight. Thank you for that. Okay, next. I've had one of the biggest. I'm trying to think of the name of it, Carlos, because you'll know it's a private accounting firm in Chicago, but they're really big. I can't remember his name right now, but the man who ran... Who? What would the name be?
BDO.
What's it stand for?
What is the name?
Well, it might be because this guy's name was Blackman.
Or Mackenzie?
Well, his name was Blackman, and he was one of the partners. Blackman something, something, something. They were big. And he was the succession planning accountant and attorney. And after he came to my program, he would basically sit down with somebody and say, look, let me look at your deal. If I don't think I can get you a 300% return on my cost, I won't do it for you. And he got like enormous business. One of my first, very, very fulfilling, a guy who was a founder of FedEx, who retired from FedEx and then became a consultant and was having trouble, started using a risk reversal approach, and he got Harley-Davidson, and he got the biggest hospital in the Midwest, and it's pretty powerful. You got a comment?
No.
Okay, all right, but but in Chicago I could remember that. I'm going to go back to the original because I need. What's the timeline on him? He's got to do it by 1. Okay, so we're going to stop for a minute because there's a gentleman we're going to interview for a little while. And he's not an enigma. He's in one of our programs, but he's very good at a niche area of online marketing. And I'm going to be very candid. I don't exactly know what he does, but he's got some large companies that he does it for. And he's going to talk for a little while, and hopefully it'll be very interesting, because I think his name of his company is like Voodoo Marketing or something. But he's very good at increasing, and I think he's not trying to sell anybody anything. So I think most of my colleagues are really intent on just trying to add value, and most of them don't even do this kind of stuff. So hopefully it'll be interesting, and I've delayed, but can we get him on the phone or on the Skype? Okay, well, so stop this, and where's the computer at? Where'd it go? Oh, I've got it. You don't have mine. Oh, I thought you were using mine. I wasn't even paying attention. Okay, how can we do it? Can you call him and see if he's still going to be available? Yes. And then, do you set this up? Can I still talk, or do I have to stop? What do I have to do? What's going to work? Okay, I got a better idea. Stop. Somebody find my computer and the power cord in there. I'm sorry about that. And why don't we use this as a chance to have a little table talk? Hopefully, I screwed a little bit with your mind today, and hopefully You got a lot of things twirling and turning. And hopefully, Joe, your kids are getting a little more specific ideas now, are you? Okay, that's good. So why don't you stop for a minute and say, of all the insights or wildly eclectic things Jay shared with me today, so far, what's the most singularly impactful that has relevancy to me? And what can I do with it? And then share that with your table. And if the tables are light here, go wherever you're good. And we'll do that till we get this set up.